for the Temple News with John Fry. I'm Sidney Rochnik, managing editor for the Temple News. We can just get right into it. How was your first half of a semester with Temple University?
Yeah, I started November 1st. It's been a race because I'm determined to see as many different people as possible. You know, schools and colleges, I've gotten to 16 of the 17. The 17th canceled once, then we had weather. So otherwise I would have said 17 out of 17. So that's important because I get to meet a lot of, I meet the deans, I meet the faculties, and so that's really a great sort of academic tour of the institution. I think when we talked last, when we met and we spent time together, student government, I've had 2 meetings with public safety, athletics. I'm not going to go through the whole list, but I've been working really hard between here and the Health Sciences campus to meet as many people as possible from Temple, trustees, alumni, and I have a bunch of trips planned over the next couple of months to move around the country, California, Florida, New York, places like that. And so, so far so good. I think people are incredibly, warm to me and, excited that I'm here, and it's been great. And I think, the common denominator has been kind of everyone is on the same page about Temple's mission, its purpose, its potential. A lot of common themes in terms of concerns and challenges, but at least it's common. And so it's been really consistent. And what's really palpable for me is how much people love this place, how much they care, how ambitious they are for it, and at times how frustrated they are that we haven't made as much progress. And so, but people are hopeful and optimistic. So that's how I would sort of characterize it.
Yeah. So in those sort of listening tours, when you've gone around and spoken and learned from everybody, I mean, what would you say you've learned about Temple or from Temple?
That people are sort of anxious to kick this university into a higher gear, that there's so much capacity, so much talent, so much to do, so many people depending on us. For example, in North Philadelphia, our neighbors. So I think that it's okay. Let's get going. I think President Epps' passing was an incredible shock to people, and I think people are really eager to restart again in that way. And I think that their advice to me is focus on public safety, focus on enrollment. Let's get our strategic plan updated and ready to go. Let's make sure that our campus continues to progress in terms of all the beautiful things that have happened here in terms of buildings and things like that. In other words, let's sort of tackle the hard problems and create sort of our own sense of momentum here. Mm-hmm. And again, it's sort of nice because there's so much agreement on the major themes here. It's not like one group is telling me this and someone else is telling me something completely different. And so there's sort of pretty clear lines here.
Right. So to get into some specifics, as you've mentioned, maybe some of the hard questions. How do you make students, along with parents and community members, feel safe on campus?
Well, I think there's two things. I think the first thing is make sure that our police department and our security force is completely staffed, well-equipped, well-trained, retained, because obviously, there's we have a lot of talent and we want to keep the talent here. Make sure that our technology is state-of-the-art, that our lighting is reliable and good, and that we're looking for as much innovation in the public safety space as we can. So I think that's the sort of fundamental thing. In my experience, though, the other big part of this is that the more activity on the streets, the more options and choices that students and the community has for dining, for living in high quality places on campus or near campus, basically the more density, the better off we are. And here I've noticed that we have a lot of work to do. And, you know, having been in West Philadelphia at a time when we had a lot of the same issues with crime, while improving public safety really helped, what helped as much, if not more, was pretty significant and dense development. You know, done in a community-minded way, but lots and lots of options and choices for people to stay around and frankly to stay out late and to do so in an environment where there were plenty of people on the street. And so to me, those two things connected are the most important ways of creating safety. And of course, you know, awareness on the part of students and employees that you're in a city and we have all the benefits of a great city, but there's also downsides. You know, and crime is just part of the reality of big cities, and there are ways which you can, you know, do extra to keep yourself safe too. I mean, there's a basic sort of awareness there.
It's very interesting. I have other questions related to safety, but I find it very interesting when you bring up development. When your presidency was announced, I think what we found at the Temple News was that many students and community members were concerned about the development projects that you had done previously around Drexel. What do you have to say to people that are concerned about the gentrification of the area surrounding Temple?
Well, I mean, and I am concerned about gentrification as well, but if you take a look at the actual projects we did at Drexel, there was no project that moved any families out of the neighborhood. This was all basically development on property that the university controlled, that had honestly been under-programmed, that kind of laid fallow, that was a parking lot when it could have been something more residential or retail. And so we didn't attempt to sort of buy a property and move people who are living there out. What we tried to do is more densely develop the campus that we controlled without impacting, you know, anyone from a neighborhood perspective. And in fact, with the introduction of an incentive program for people to buy houses in the area, we actually tried to make it a more hospitable place for actually Drexel families to live, which we would hope to do with Temple. And not that we have time right now, but a very important part of that strategy is to support local public schools. So there's high quality public education, which is good for all families, including families who may be Temple affiliated, who may want to live in the neighborhood, but also send their kids to high quality schools. So when I think of development, dense development, I think around the campus that we control, we can do more to create more amenities. So an example is the announcement we just made about, I'm forgetting the name of the restaurant.
Iron Hill.
Iron Hill. It's 10,000 square feet of space that we control, sitting vacant. Now it's going to have an Iron Hill, probably 50 or 60 jobs. You know, a really nice sort of option. You know, affordable, but also something that is going to attract a lot of people in the evenings. So that would be an example. You know, there was no gentrification there.
Okay. That said, how do you, or maybe will you, include community members in the conversation when you're, you know, doing these development projects?
That's vital. And so, I think one of the reasons why we were able to work so well with our community in West Philadelphia is that we had opportunities to sort of create kind of neutral ground where we both were able to meet and work together. Schools were a big part of that. We had something called the Promise Neighborhoods grant, which allowed us to support 8 local public schools. Those were opportunities for us to work together to improve, you know, local public education. We had something called the Dornsife Center for Community Partnerships, which in effect was an extension center which allowed us to provide a free legal clinic, free health clinics, all sorts of services to the neighbors, which basically I think met the needs that they had expressed to us. And so what I would hope to be able to do here over time is between that kind of extension work in local public schools, create opportunities for, you know, the community and the university to come together, sort of explore things that we could do together, and also improve the sort of quality of life in the neighborhood. You know, most neighbors care about, first about safety, They care about the university being a good neighbor relative to keeping streets clean, and things of that nature. They care about jobs, and they care about high quality public education. And so I think we would tend to focus on those sort of three things continuously, and then also have the opportunity for regular dialogue, and also not be the kind of institution that kind of rides in with a bunch of ideas and tries to impose them on the neighborhood, because that never works, for sure. So.
Okay. To kind of jump around, another thing that you mentioned, and of course is very important, is the future of enrollment at the school. You've mentioned many plans to increase that before, taking from different areas, but what is your goal for enrollment numbers for Temple?
Well, in a sort of broad sense, so the university back in 2017 enrolled slightly over 40,000 students. So we're a university that's built for about that amount. Now we're slightly over 30,000 students. So there's a significant gap that we have to close. I personally would be happy if we can start making progress to, sort of between 33 and 35,000. See if we can sort of get that number, back over, say, a 5-year period of time, which is ambitious given the demographics and things of that nature. However, in addition to that, I don't think the university has been able yet to sort of figure out its strategy in online education, where I think we could also serve a lot of students who would like the benefit of a Temple education but are not going to be able to come here physically, because of, their jobs or family obligations and things like that. And so I think there's room for further growth beyond the physical, presence on the campus, of maybe a couple thousand more after that. And we'll be exploring whether or not we can stage more significant online growth here as well. We do some, we don't do as much as a university of our size and our quality. So I would say 35, though, would be my kind of target over the next 3 or 5 years.
And to clarify, is that meaning you would like to hit 40,000 again, or is 35,000?
I'm not sure it's possible, and I need more time. I mean, if you take a look at our freshman numbers this year and the way at least applications are trending for this coming fall, we're starting to stage a comeback. But that's based on, 2 cycles. And again, we'll see how it ends up in the fall. But, our team did incredibly well for this fall, especially in light of downturns you saw at a lot of other institutions. They were up 4,900, freshman class, talented, really diverse, a great, a great step forward. If we can have another 2, 3, 4 years like that, I think we'll be on the way back.
And then you've also mentioned before that you were also looking to possibly pull more from international demographics. Is that still a plan?
Yeah, I'd really like to do that. And yes, it's for growth, but I also feel like having a larger international student population here is better for the student experience in general. I think it's better for the academic experience. I mean, I know, when you're at, say, 15% international enrollment, you have a real critical mass. You have the opportunity to have more countries represented. And I think right now, because of the last number of years, I think that those numbers have diminished. I'd like to build those back again. I'm heading to Japan on Saturday morning. We have the Tokyo campus, and we're opening a Kyoto branch. And I'll be going to India in April. I'll be visiting the Rome campus in May, and I suspect I'll be going to Africa eventually. So I think international student enrollment for growth, but also for quality of experience and quality of academic life is also great. And we were spoiled at Drexel. We had a really robust international student population, really great numbers from a bunch of different countries, India, South Korea, Vietnam, Nigeria, and that was just such an important part of the ethos of the institution. Here, I'm less familiar about the mix right now, but my feeling is that there's certainly capacity to grow.
Enrollment, along with just growing the student body, also has to do with the finances of the university.
It does.
tuition and growing tuition is something that every student, worries about every year. As a state-related university, we've been told that if we were to get more state support, then we were more likely to be able to hold tuition flat or something similar. What is your plan to going to Harrisburg and getting more state support?
So I've already been there, just to sort of make the rounds and familiarize myself with the people who, in the end, will be making decisions about Temple's appropriation, which has been flat. I mean, I think the Commonwealth is generous to us. I think they believe in Temple, but I think because of their larger fiscal situation, it has held pretty steady at around 150 million. I think we need to now make the case in a much more forceful and strategic way about why those numbers should start going back to where they once were, which I think Steve can get you that number. I don't know where it peaked out, but I think it was in the 170s.
It was in the 170s in 2009, yeah.
That would make a real difference, and I think that of course then takes pressure off families and it takes pressure off of us relative to tuition increases. I also think there's a lot more we can do with philanthropy. I think I'm looking at the whole institutional advancement area, in terms of how we're set up, to raise money every year. If we raised an additional $20 to $30 million a year and we had a slightly better appropriation, we're now really taking a bite out of this problem, that we're talking about. And also, it's important to think about a larger endowment campaign for the institution, because if you have more endowment that's devoted to student scholarships and to faculty support, again, that just takes pressure off the operating budget and allows you to, provide students with scholarships that they need and not to have to sort of do that via tuition. And those are all areas where it's pretty clear Temple has a lot of upside and a lot of potential. It's just going to take a ton of work, which I'm prepared to do.
Going back to something that I think we mentioned a little earlier, hinted at, Temple has had some difficult years of late. When you're thinking about the morale of the community and students, how do you go about raising the morale?
It's a great question, and I think the only way I know how to approach that is to start by really understanding, okay, so what are both the issues, but what are people trying to do here to fulfill themselves, and get a sense of what the dreams and the aspirations are, and between really sort of tuning in and understanding their view of the problems, but also tuning in and understanding their view of, like, what should this thing look like, in a year, 4 years, 10 years. You get a sort of composite, and I'm getting that composite. It's coming together more clearly for me, and then it's a matter of just devoting all of your time and attention to directly solving the problems that are holding people back, and then doing the kind of things for people that they really want, whether it's higher program quality in certain areas or more access to those programs, better facilities, more safety, and things of that nature. So I think the only way you really raise morale in the end is by figuring out what is the thing that's holding us back, and then by delivering results, so that each and every year you can say, wow, these 5 or 10 things happened that really sort of pushed us along in terms of the quality of the experience here at Temple. So, we'll talk over the next couple of years about this, but I'm hoping that, each and every time, we get together every quarter, every 6 months, I'll be able to say, Sidney, here's what's new, and here's what we're planning to do, and then we did that, and here's what's next. And after a while, there's a sense of, there's like momentum here now. And that's the only way I know how to do it. I'm all ears, though, for advice.
How have you interacted and communicated with the number of unions that we have on campus so far?
I've met with the leadership of the faculty union, and that's been positive conversation. I've met on Friday. I don't know how many unions there were. It must have been like 24 unions who came over. We had a reception for them in the Charles Library. These are all union leaders, business managers who basically work on campus. Honestly, there were like 50 or 60 people there, so I don't know all the unions that were represented. Many of them do construction for us. I believe a fair number are representing employees here on campus. And, you know, it was just to give them an update on what we're doing and to sort of have conversations about that. And so it seems like it's productive so far. And, you know, look, I think we all have the same thing in mind, which is how do we sort of, you know, move Temple forward from an enrollment, from a financial, from a public safety standpoint. I think everyone has sort of the same goals, because if we can achieve those goals, then everyone is going to benefit.
What do you want Temple students and the community to hear from you?
That I am accessible, that I am deeply committed to this work, that I want to know what they think, and then I would love to hear from them about construction solutions to the problems that we have. I mean, you know, it's easy for people to sort of complain to someone like me, and here's my list of, you know, the 5 things I don't like. What I really like is tell me the 5 things you don't like and tell me the 5 things you're going to do about the 5 things you don't like. And I find that when people are sort of invited into the problem-solving part of this, things go a whole lot better. So I'll be here to listen, to learn, but I would really like their sort of mind share around, okay, what are our solutions? What are our innovations? What are the cool things we can do to sort of move the place forward? I mean, this is our university. We kind of own it together. It's not, you know, the administration's university. And so I would hope that there was a sense of me having the kind of administration that looks to create a sort of a shared sense of ownership for, you know, the sort of future and the fate of this university.